welcome to the Biddeford Parsonage Museum, historical residence of Lucy Maud Montgomery during 1894-95. Come in, relax, and join us for Storytime with LM Montgomery.
Hi, my name's Sakura Maclean, and I'm going to be reading Jen's Device by LM Montgomery. "If there isn't Jenny White coming up the road," said Violet Taylor to herself as she leaned out of her window to pull on a spray of honeysuckle from the vine outside. She was only here Thursday, so she must be on some errand now. Wonder what it is. Hi there. This last was for the benefit of a black-eyed, rosy-cheeked girl who was walking rapidly up the lane and who waved her hand gaily in response to her friend's salute. "Come down here quick, Vi. I've got a favor to ask, and I'm in a big hurry." Vi accordingly pulled in her head and ran down to meet the breathless Jenny at the front door. "I've come after you," announced the latter. "That is, if you'll come. Mother and Father are going over to Amherst, and they will be away all night, so I wanted to come and stay with me. That is, if you'll come. Mother and Father are going over to Amherst, and they will be away all night, so I want you to come and stay with me if you aren't scared to stay all night with nobody in the house but our two selves." "Not a bit," said Vi readily. And in a few minutes, both girls, beaming with the anticipated pleasure of spending the night together, being their own sole mistresses, were hurrying down the dusty, buttercup-sprinkled road that led to the White establishment. Vi lived on the edge of the little country village where the stores and churches and schools were, but Jenny's home was more than a mile away from it, and nearly as far from anywhere else, as Jenny said, for the land on both sides of the White farm was owned by a businessman in the village and was not built on at all. Jenny had no brothers or sisters and was sometimes rather lonesome, but she went to the village high school and had an inseparable friend in Violet Taylor, so that she did not consider herself so badly off after all. When the girls reached the White farm, they found Mr. and Mrs. White all ready to start, and soon after they drove away, leaving numberless instructions with the two girls as to what they were to do and not to do. "I feel perfectly bewildered," said Jenny as the buggy disappeared. "I've hoped you remembered some of it, Vi, for my brain isn't capable of holding it all. Now, for a good time, I'll get some molasses and we'll have a taffy pull to begin with." They had their taffy pull, and with so much fun over it, as well as milking the cows and doing up their chores, that the time passed swiftly, and it was bedtime before they knew it. Neither of the girls felt nervous over their lonely situation, but they were the possessors of good healthy nerves, and tramps were almost unknown in Beechmont. Jen had locked all the doors, and there was something delightful in keeping house all night on their own responsibility. "I feel dreadfully tired, Vi," said Jen as they climbed up the stairs to her pretty right room. "I guess we shall sleep sound enough tonight." "I'm sure I shall," said Vi with a sleepy yawn. "I suppose nobody will bother to run off with us or the house before morning." "I guess it ain't likely. Are you sure you aren't scared to be here all alone like this, Vi?" "For sure. What's going to hurt us?" "Oh, nothing, of course. Some girls, though, would be frightened out of their seven senses. I wish old Jink was alive. Nobody could ever come within a rod of the house without his waking everybody. Do you know, Vi, I never thought of it till this blessed minute, but there's over $500 in the little sideboard drawer in the dining room right below us. Father put it there last week when he sold the chestnut roan and the bay mare. And there's all the plates there, too, and the silver spoons. Just fancy if anyone knew it." "Oh, do stop talking like that, Jen," said Vi as she crawled into bed. "You've made me feel quakish already. Hurry up and come to bed. I've got a funny thing to tell you. It happened in school yesterday when you weren't there. I guess you missed just a circus." "Go ahead then," said Vi as she blew out the light and crept into her nest. "Well," began Vi, "you know the seniors had a Latin exam yesterday afternoon, and Mr. English was prancing around trying to keep perfect order. If you so much as squeaked a paper, he'd almost eat you. You know, Harry Acker sits in the back corner. He had a big paper bag and he brought his lunch in, and just as soon as Mr. English's back was turned, Harry got out his paper bag, blew it full of air, and then he whacked it against the desk, and goodness, such an unearthly noise it made. I never would have believed a paper bag could make such a noise. Everyone jumped, even Mr. English, and the girls squealed, and Sue Chapman went into hysterics. You know Sue never loses a chance to go into hysterics. You should have seen Mr. English's face. He got, red as everything, and he gave Harry Acker a regular lecture." They talked for some time longer, but even schoolgirls' tongues will grow tired at last, and finally they fell asleep. Jen did not know how long she had slept, when she had suddenly awoke and found herself sitting straight up in bed. All was silence, broken only by V's regular breathing beside her. Yet Jen had a vague sensation as having been awakened by some unusual sound. She listened breathlessly for a minute, and then was just concluding that she must be mistaken, when it came again, a muffled sound in the room below, as if something had been struck or dropped on the floor. Jen was a brave girl and a quick-witted one, but for a moment she felt herself growing weak and cold with fear. "This won't do," she whispered resolutely. "I mustn't go fainting now, of all times. There's somebody in the house, that's sure and certain, and V, wake up!" She shook her sleeping chum gently. "What's the matter?" muttered V drowsily as she struggled up into a sitting posture. "Goodness, Jen, what's the matter?" "Hush," whispered her friend. "Don't sing out or anything. V, for your life, there's someone in the home. Tramps or burglars, I suppose. And they're in the dining room, so they must be after that money." "Oh, goodness, Jen, are you sure?" "Sure, yes. Don't you hear them?" Indeed, the muffled, stealthy noises beneath them were audible enough. V shivered and clutched her friend. "Oh, Jen, what will they do? Will they kill us?" "Hardly. Not likely they know that we're in the house, or if they do, they won't molest us as long as we keep quiet." Jen slipped noisily out of bed and began feeling for her clothes. "Oh, Jen, what will we do? You're never going down." "Yes, I am," said Jen resolutely. She quite recovered her composure. "I don't mean they shall get off with all that money of father's if I can do anything to prevent it. Perhaps I can't, but I do mean to see. I'm going to creep downstairs and listen. You stay here, V, and keep quiet." "I guess I won't, then," returned V, whose courage had also returned. "I'm not going to let you venture down there all alone into goodness knows what. You may be killed. If you are bound to go, I'll go too. Where's my dress?" "Don't make a bit of noise, then," whispered Jen. It's lucky it's moonlight. Now, if you are ready, come." Softly, but with wildly beating hearts, the two girls stole out of the room and down the long hall and the thickly carpeted stairs. The lower hall lay clear and bright in the moonlight that fell through the fanlight of the front door. The dining room door was about an inch ajar. Standing at the foot of the stairs, clinging tremblingly to each other, the girls heard plainly the shuffling of feet, the murmur of gruff voices, and the rattling of dishes. Evidently, there were 2 or 3 in the gang, and they had a lantern, as the gleam of the light betrayed. Presently, one of the marauders struggled up against a chair, which went skating noisily over the floor. Let up on that, will you?" growled one of his companions. "If there's anyone in the house, you'll have them down with your confounded racket." "There ain't anyone but 2 gals," was the sullen response, "and it won't be well for them if they interfere. I've come after that money, and I mean to get it if it takes all night. It must be somewhere around. Old White always kept his cash in the room when I worked here." Jen put her lips close to V's ear. "What in the Miss Jake Summersall?" she breathed. "He was hired here 3 years ago, and he stole everything he could lay his hands on then." "Can we do anything?" whispered V. "If we can manage to get out, we must run for help. It's so far to any house, they'd be long gone before we got back, but they might be caught. We'll try it anyway. I don't dare try the front door, and we can't easily get to the back one. The only thing is to creep into the parlor and get out the far window. It goes up easy. Come." Cautiously, the 2 girls tiptoed down the hall. As they passed a small stand, Jen stopped suddenly, and a daring idea flashed into her brain. On the stand, she spied a stout, empty paper bag. V looked at her questioningly. Quickly as thought, and as noiselessly, Jen lifted the bag and blew into it. In a trice, it was inflated to its utmost extent. She caught its mouth together. "Listen," hissed a low voice in the dining room. "Didn't I hear something, Jake?" "Now," breathed V. Jen lifted the bag and struck it against the wall with all of her force. The noise of the explosion almost frightened herself and sounded terribly loud in the stillness of the big vacant hall. There was a moment's appalled silence in the dining room, then the sound of a terrified rush for the window, a reckless scramble, a few choice oaths, and the dying echo of flying footsteps over the lawn. Jen and V looked at each other dumbly. It had all passed so quickly that they could hardly realize it. Had the thieves really gone? Jen found her tongue first. "V, have they really gone?" "I haven't a doubt of it. They ran as if they thought everyone in Beechmont was after them. I bet they took that for a pistol shot. Didn't it make an awful noise? If it hadn't been for that blessed stories of your V, I would have never thought of it. I guess their guilty consciences imagined it into something terrible. I just did it before I had time to think over it, else I would never have dared. Come on, and let's go. They're far enough away by this time." In their panic-stricken rush, the marauders had not stopped for lantern or booty. The silver spoons and plate were tied up in bundles on the table, and in the little drawers under the sideboard bracket, the $500 were undisturbed. Jen and Vi, now that danger was over, found their nerves somewhat shaken, but were spunky enough to conclude that they should stay alone until morning. "It's not long now," said Jen, "and I'd sooner wait here than start off that lonely road. I guess our callers won't come back. Help me down from the window, Vi, and straighten things up a bit. I guess neither of us will forget this night in a hurry. You know, Vi, I really think we've behaved pretty well." And so everyone else thought too. When the story came out, it may be added that Jake Summersall and his confederates were all captured soon afterwards in an attempt to rob a store at Amherst and meet with their just deserts. Jen and Vi bore their honors modestly and felt relieved when the excitement died away. "I wonder if they have any idea how badly scared we really were," said Jen. "What would you take, Vi, and go through that experience again?" "Nothing in the world," said Vi promptly. "We did our best and everything turned out all right, but it was just touch and go, and I can't think of that dreadful half hour yet without a shiver." This story was written in July 1898 and was published in November 1898 in the Family Herald and Weekly Star.